All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the desert of the real. Birdie Num Num and those leatherettes are still warm. Very excited, definitely this time about AV Live because we are not just having an amazing guest and conversation about a still very interesting and important topic, but we will be discussing what I feel is the changing of the ages. So welcome everybody who is now filing into the chat rooms of YouTube and Facebook. And with us, great to have a great individual, a great person, and somebody who I am proud to call a great friend recently. Amanda, thanks for coming back on AM Bite.
Thank you for having me again, Miguel and Vance.
And Vance the Moondog, how are you? Oh no.
Scrambling for my mute button after talking to
like
people
a
in
work
the chat.
meeting.
Oh, really good. I'm looking forward. This should be an exciting one. Talking about, with the advent of the prophecy, right? And so forth. So I'm looking forward to hearing Amanda speak about that topic and all the good questions from the people in the chat rooms.
Indeed, indeed. As always, people, I see you in the chat room. I don't know why people are talking about how they're not wearing pants during this video, but whatever. I have a nice shirt, but I admit I am wearing shorts here because it's just hot. Again, as we were talking, it's been a weird August here in the Midwest. Record storms and tornadoes. The god Thor must be angry or something like that. But as always, please, if you have questions when we get to the questions section, write it all in caps, question marks, keep it all on the topic, obviously, of the Cathars and European heresy and Gnosticism, and it will get to you. Super chats, obviously, will get to the top and so forth. And the audio version, of course, will be available in a few days, and it will also be on YouTube. So it'll be out for all of you. So, let's see. I have so much to talk about, or that I've written about. We had a really spanning conversation last time, Amanda, but we still didn't get to so much. And we definitely want to talk about the prophecy, but I want to wait just a little bit longer because it usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes for everybody to really file into the chat room as they get their alerts on YouTube and Facebook and they get to their computer and all that's so. But from our last conversation, is there anything you think we missed that was important? Beyond the prophecy, obviously the prophecy parts, but beyond that.
I don't know. I was hoping you could answer that question.
I can answer that question, of course, because I wrote copious notes. I guess one of the questions I had is the Black Madonna. And although our audience know this, but as we talked, a lot of the information that you receive never gets out of France. And then some of the information that gets out of France to Europe never comes to the United States. You're always pointing out stuff to me, and I'm like, this is not in any of our books. No scholars talk about it. So the Black Madonna, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy that you started with that, actually, because as you can see, I have one right here. Which is a bit broken now.
Lovely.
But it's Our Lady of Montserrat, which is very close to Montségur, interestingly enough. And in the Church of Montségur, we have a replica of this Black Madonna, which was gifted to the church by the monks from Montserrat. And Montserrat is in Barcelona, and it's about 2 hours drive from Montségur. And in typical style, as with all of these places, there is a legend about the Black Madonna and how she appeared in Montserrat. That there were a number of shepherds that heard a strange ethereal voice singing long before the Church of Montserrat existed. And when they followed this strange voice, they found a statue of a black goddess. And this was before there was a church there, obviously. And so they took this statue and started to worship the statue, believing that she was some kind of ancient pagan deity. And a small chapel grew up around this cult, which was then kind of incorporated into Christianity, of course, at that time. But the story is quite strange because the statue kept disappearing and reappearing in different places, and people would try to steal her or throw her away in some way, and she'd always reappear. So it's an interesting story about Montserrat. And so this is the lady that I have right here from Montserrat. But as you know, there's a deeper mystery to the Black Madonna, which, you know, you say this information doesn't get out of France. It doesn't really get out of anywhere. You know, apart from a couple of brave people like myself and a few other crazies who are willing to talk about it. But you'll see here that I have 2 black stones. So you know the story about the black stones?
The black stones? No, please share.
Man, I don't either.
Okay.
We might have discussed, yeah.
Okay, maybe we didn't. So when I first moved to France in 2016, and I'd become ordained into the Gnostic Church, I was told by a clairvoyant that I would be moving to Montségur. And that when I went to Montségur, I would become the guardian of the black stones. And the way she put it was the deity that came to Earth on a meteorite. So when I first went to Montségur and I met Richard, the first gift that he gave to me were these black stones, which are meteoric in origin. And they're only found in the Pyrenees. They're only found in one location in the world. However, Miguel, as you know, you've interviewed Patrice Chaplin before now. Yeah. And I'm currently reading her book, The Stone Cradle. And
isn't it incredible?
We've made contact as well. And thanks to you and your recommendation. And it seems like she also knows about these stones. And they're connected to the same meteor strike that happened, that spread from northern northern Spain into the south of France, into the Pyrenees region. So what I want to tell you about these is I'm going to do something pretty strange. Okay. This is like show and tell at school. Right. Are you ready for this, guys? So, you know the saying that you can never get blood out of a stone?
Yeah.
Well, watch this.
Holy God, that stone is bleeding. Wow. That's incredible. And what is what is the legend or the reasoning behind it?
Well, nobody really knows how these stones were discovered. They only, as I say, are found in 2 regions of the Languedoc of Occitania. And you probably heard the story about the idea that the Holy Grail was a stone that fell from the crown of Lucifer. And you probably heard the story about Parsifal, where they say, you know, if you come into contact with these stones, you will never get sick and your hair will never turn white for as long as you have these stones in your possession. So it's believed that the Cathars had these stones and that they knew about them, and that they knew about their properties too. And they definitely have healing powers. And someone that I know, he used these stones on his mum when she had cancer, and her cancer went into remission. You know, it's quite a strong claim, but it's true. So, you know, going back to your original question, the original Black Madonna, I believe, was a meteorite, was a meteoric stone from Pessinus. And at the time when Hannibal was persecuting Rome, the oracles said, you must go to Pessinus and get this Cybele statue, or Cybele, however you want to pronounce it, and bring it to Rome. And so they did. And the interesting thing about this particular statue this stone is she was never allowed to be touched by a man. She could only be touched by a woman. Her priestesses kept her in a special place. I don't know how they convinced them to give this stone, up. I don't know if they had a choice, but certainly the story is that the stone, the deity, the meteoric Black Madonna, was passed from woman to woman to woman until it came onto the boat, and there it was passed into the hands of a male priest dressed as a woman. And this is where the legend states that the male Christian vestments come from. So this Black Madonna could only be handled by women, and so these priests dress like women, and then they later, well, not later actually, at the same time, they also castrated the men who wanted to serve this deity. So I know that sounds complete crazy, but the original Black Madonna, the original meteoric stone from Pessinus, is under the Vatican.
Really? Surprise, surprise. Not surprise.
So the Black Madonna is a very, very interesting subject because there is so much to it that people just don't know. It's not simply, oh, it's a replica of Kali from India, or she just got dirty over like a few thousand years of worship. There's something much deeper on an esoteric level, especially when you consider where these stones came from and what they are and their properties. And when you consider that the Kaaba stone in Mecca is also a black meteoric stone, why do people worship these things? Because it works. It's the only reason. Why make pilgrimages to kiss these stones? Why make pilgrimages to go and visit these statues and these places where these spirits are said to emerge from and to manifest in, unless it works? One of my kind of biggest pilgrimages when I first moved to France was to go to a Black Madonna. And the exciting and interesting thing about that is that was the first time I had an encounter with the White Lady. I've talked with you about this once. And I worshipped at the Black Madonna, and I was praying for about 200 people there as part of a kind of group. And the Black Madonna there was very, very ancient, very, very powerful. And she manifested in the night, but as a white spirit at the end of my bed, a woman of light. And she spoke and she said, you think you're coming here to see the Black Madonna, but this is what I really look like. Now, what do you want? You called me, so what do you want? And I obviously couldn't speak because I was just in complete shock, and I was pinching myself to make sure I was actually awake, and I was definitely awake. I was terrified, and all I could do was just sit there hiding under the duvet, staring at this thing. Huh?
I would too. No doubt. I would do exactly the same.
Overwhelming. And I couldn't speak. And then after a couple of hours, she kind of extended this filament of light out towards me and started scanning up and down my body. And then she said, what you want is the truth, and the truth you shall have. And then she said something really strange, which was, and if you want to know the truth about your boyfriend, look on his phone. And then she disappeared. I went, what? I kind of came out of this like trance that I'd been in, and I said, what? No, I'm not doing that. And she disappeared.
and you looked at his phone, I'm sure.
No, I asked him if I could, and he said no.
Which was the answer, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it was a funny story. He'd been in contact with his ex-girlfriend after lying about it, that's all. But the funny thing about this story is the next day I went to a local shop where this happened. This happened in a place called Orcival in the Auvergne region of France. And I met a man there who I just said to him, do you know of anyone who's had anything strange happen around here, like related to the church or the Black Madonna? And he said, yes, me. And then he told me that a year before, he was about to commit suicide, and he went into the church, and he owned the shop opposite the church next to the hotel where I was staying. So it was on exactly the same ley line. And he went into the church and he started like praying, and he said, I'm not a religious person, but I felt like praying because I was about to kill myself. And that night in his bedroom, the same thing happened that's happened to me. He was in bed, and this woman of light appeared at the end of his bed, and he was terrified as I was, and she said pretty much the same things to him, but she said, don't kill yourself. Don't do what you were planning to do, because if you do, this, and this will happen to your family. And so he didn't kill himself, and it was so extraordinary that he was sharing that story with me because of what I had just experienced. You know, if it had just been me, I could have written it off maybe as a dream, even though I knew I wasn't dreaming, or in some other way written it off. But this man, who I didn't know at all, had an almost identical experience 1 year almost to the day.
Incredible stories. And yes, you're talking about Patrice Chaplin, and her last book is incredible. I mean, she's been on the show and talked about how that area is full of portals. And again, it's not something that we discovered, or you and I. This is something that the Romans, the Gauls, everybody knew that area was full of some sort of visitation. And of course, Patrice talks about the meteorites and this being called Lucifer that's in the Iberian Peninsula around there. And of course, we can mention the Kaaba in Mecca. Cybele originally began as a meteorite that fell on earth and was worshipped, and she's considered the mother of all goddesses. So even the part about the men dressing as women, that's not rare. And I think in Russia, the shamans used to dress up as women when they'd take their flights to fool the archons or the spirits while they were trying to get to the other world. And in many cults, like the cult of Mithras, you're supposed to cross-dress at a certain point. So there's this illusion trickster play, because I'm sure you agree these beings are tricksters in themselves. They have moralities or desires that sometimes are alien to our little human ideas, of boyfriends and money and bank accounts and all that stuff. And for the audience, you said that when you met to talk to Richard. Who is Richard? Many might not know.
Stanley. Sorry, Richard Stanley, who was the director of Color Out of Space.
About meteorites, of course. Good movie.
Yeah,
Great
that was
movie.
2 years before we made the movie that happened. And so
Awesome.
we'd already put, that was already in the script long before I arrived on the scene, of course, because it's based on the Lovecraft story. But the synchronicity, if we can call it that, of, the first gift he gave me when I turned up at Montserrat was these meteoric stones that bleed with some kind of alien substance that heals people. In a way, it's the opposite of what the color does in the movie. But then there are many different ways of looking at the movie, as we already discussed.
Yeah, indeed. We talked about the movie and the meteorites and a whole bunch else. And somebody in the chat, Amanda, was talking about the meteorites and the Black Madonna and relating it to Mary Magdalene. How do you see Mary Magdalene playing into this, or does she play into this at all?
It's a good question. I mean, I tend to look at these things in streams of similarity, in a sense. If we look at it from a Gnostic perspective, if we consider the idea of the emanations or the syzygies, certain beings come from a certain stream, perhaps. It has been suggested that there is a link, of course, between these stones and Mary Magdalene, but I've never actually explored that myself. Yeah, I look more deeply at the pre-Christian origins in the cult of Cybele and Pessinus. I'm not quite sure how the link happens yet between Mary Magdalene and the Black Stones, but I'm open to learn more if there is one.
What about the Black Madonna?
Black Madonna, definitely, because the
And Mary
original Black
Magdalene.
Madonna, the Black Madonna and Mary Magdalene, again, I don't really personally see the link, mostly because I don't see Mary Magdalene as a kind of pre-Christian deity. I
Right.
see her more as a kind of human being who's divinized through her relationship with Christos, who was a high priestess of her own cult, probably from maybe a Canaanite background, Syrian background. If you look at the Migdal stone in Migdal, I don't know if you've seen that yet, Miguel, but it has some very interesting symbolism, including the earliest depiction of the menorah. But the menorah, you can trace that back to the cult of Tanit. And a lot of the symbolism in the Migdal stone, you can definitely link to a more ancient pre-Christian goddess, Tanit. And so Tanit is very interesting because she was linked with Carthage.
Mhm.
And Carthage is where the first ever use of the name Cathar came from, I've discovered. The
Really?
very, very beginning of early Christianity. Yeah. And the whole cult in North Africa was extremely interesting and extremely rich. And a lot of the very early heretics, Christian heretics, came out of the Carthage cult, came out of North Africa, like everyone that I like.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
around Alexandria, hotbed of heresy. But
Yeah.
Cathar means, I think it's Latin or Greek, means pure one, right?
Yeah. So what happened, and forgive me because I can't remember the exact name of the bishop, but the Romans were trying to make the early Christians sacrifice to their gods in the square. And if the Christian priests did this, they were considered impure. And
Mhm.
this particular group of early Christians believed that if you sacrifice to another god, in other words, to the Romans gods of this particular time, then you had to go back to the beginning and start your training to be a priest again because you were ritually impure. And they believed that a priest who was sinful in themselves could not then administer the sacraments, very different to what we have now in the Catholic Church. But that each priest had to be pure within themselves, or the sacraments wouldn't work, and the Eucharist wouldn't work, and the Spirit wouldn't manifest in the wine. So they had a very strict opinion about this, and that's where the first use of the term "the pure ones," cathars, came into the public domain, I think. And
Mhm.
this is going back, I think, to the 3rd century. It may have been even earlier. So it's long before, we're talking about what happened in the Languedoc.
And the Cathars, they didn't really call themselves Cathars, like most Gnostics didn't call themselves Gnostics. Didn't they call themselves just the good people, the good Christians, or
Yeah, we have differing stories about this.
uh,
Some people say that they did. In Occitania, they believe that they did. It's certainly a big part of the Occitan identity to use that name, but then other people dismiss it and say, "Oh no, that was I can't even remember the right word,
yeah,
a bad phrase." Anyway, um,
polemic, yeah,
pejorative. I think that's the
pejorative.
word.
You're correct.
Pejorative.
Yeah,
It's very hot here as well.
is it?
Yeah, um, a pejorative. So it's really difficult to answer that with any
Yeah.
historical fact. But it's said that they called themselves the good men and women, or the pure ones. But I don't even think they would have called themselves the pure ones, because that would be going against their belief in humility.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And like you said, there's a lot of obfuscation because of the historical records and censorship and who knows what. And well, we want to get to prophecy, but first, probably a couple of questions for the audience. I know Cosmic Koala, and I sent you this question last night, or we talked about it, but he wanted to know about Occitan. That's the original language of southern France? Is that still spoken where you are, or have you
It
had to
is.
learn it? Is it?
I haven't had the luxury of learning it yet because I'm still trying to learn French, and and Occitan is still spoken in Occitania. Yeah, it has been revived. You know, one of the great things about this Cathar Gnostic revival is that it has brought so many people into the knowledge, the gnosis of Occitania and its language. And it has restored the language into the local schools. There are still people who speak it in the mountains. You know, the accent is very strong. It's a beautiful, beautiful language, but it is very different to French. So right now, I'm not able to speak it very well.
Mhm.
But when I get time, it is something I'd like to learn. Yeah, but it is spoken. Yeah,
And it was banned for a while after the Inquisition and all the whole crusade against the Cathars.
it was, and it's hard to imagine that that can actually happen. But then it's hard to imagine that 1 million people were killed for an ideology
Yeah.
that was actually harmless.
Yeah, was doing so, yeah, harmless is doing such a good thing to the consciousness of humanity. Again, it was to
Yeah,
to the whole region. Again, we talked in our last interview how it was a renaissance before the Renaissance. You had alchemists and Knights Templar, and
yeah.
women had more rights. I mean, it was just an amazing energy there. And it should be mentioned, this interview is on the 13th, so that's a number connected to the Knights Templar. So it seems like destiny made us the aeons moved it so we would do the interview today. And I guess that's why I needed to spend a week in YouTube jail.
Yeah,
But
sometimes the aeons use the archons.
That's a good
yeah,
thought.
yeah, I get, yes, a good way to look at it. And Vance, do you see any questions from the audience, or do you have any of your own
Yeah,
questions?
I had a couple but
Occitan
forgot
or
the order.
English is fine.
Okay. Let's see. Excuse this, the ringtone going on in the background. It must be the spammers are active in the morning. Um, so let's see. Which one
Maybe
should I
it's the
pick up first?
Spanish Inquisition calling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Masherati wants to know if there is anything to the theories that link the archetypes used in the tarot cards to the theology of the Cathars.
Yes, I believe that there is. I haven't studied this in any great depth, but I do know several people that I respect very much who have. I can't say any more about that because I haven't actually looked into it myself, but I'd say, yeah, definitely there is. Yeah, from what I've been told by people that I really respect and that know a lot about the history of the region. Yeah.
Interesting. And Oswald Spengler, who is a frequent visitor to us at Ambite Live, wants to know what you know about the calendar system that the Cathar prophecy used.
Good question. I don't know. All I know is that when belibaste was killed, which is very close to this day where we are now, not very far away at all, he said in 700 years the laurel will turn green again, and the good men and women shall return, as you know. What calendar system that they were using, I don't know, but that came to light, this prophecy, through the Neo-Cathar movement, which was started by one of the progenitors of my church, and was started also by an academic called Deodat Roche, or Rocher, who was a French academic who lived in Occitania. And he really single-handedly, with a lot of esotericists and scholars, brought about this Cathar return, which started in the 19th century. So how that came into the kind of current consciousness, nobody really knows. They don't really. I've looked into records and the Inquisition records and things like that, and I can find no mention of this in the records, but it's been passed on as a kind of oral tradition through different people, different esotericists, different Gnostics for a very long time. And given everything that's happening in the world at the moment, and given everything I've seen, like a good example being, as I said to you, Miguel, in a private message, the plague of Chinese moths that we had 2 years ago that decimated the entire mountain and ate everything that was green. And we thought everything was just dead. And we had landslides because, these bushes were holding together a lot of their root system was holding together parts of the mountain. And so many of the roads up the mountain were blocked because of landslides when this happened. And we saw it as a terrible sign, that these trees were dying. And everyone who lived on the mountain could feel that something, was happening that wasn't right. And then sure enough, they started to turn green again. So this is not just a myth, this is something those of us who live there can observe and have observed. And this is what really made me, as a person who loves Montserrat so much, stand up and take notice of this, and as well as the amount of people contacting me who have what they, feel are past life memories of this time and my own memories of that time. So that is a long answer to say that I don't know.
Julian
All good.
calendar. Well, let's get into the prophecy since we got there. And
Yeah.
I wanted to start, and I hope I don't go into my own rants because yours are good, Amanda. I just sort of lose myself in pure drivel. But a lot of individuals who I respect, like you, usually women who are psychic, and this includes Jessa Reed and many others, are telling me that yes, this is the age of, there is a changing age, and this is the age of Sophia, and she is returning. Whether she's happy or not, well, it will it will remain to see, because again, this is a trickster being. But they're convinced and that this is it. And as we talked, August 21st is a big day. It's my daughter Ellie's she'll be turned 6 on August 21st, and I'll be at a wedding at the adjoining of the unions down the road. So there seems to be a seismic change, and I think there is something changing myself. I am still suspicious. Like I tell people, you need that surly Gnostic in the corner waving his finger, and that'll be me. Like, watch out, watch out. Let's not get too, let's not create egregores or go too far with this. But I think there is something going on. And it reminded me too this morning, Amanda, I was thinking of the miracle at Fatima and how that prophecy came about. And when I was a kid, my mom knew many people who had witnessed that miracle, the sun moving over Portugal. I mean, hundreds of people. And when you think about it, there were hundreds of thousands of people who witnessed this when it happened 2 generations ago. And that would be a hard trick to pull. So something really supernatural happened there and changed the lives of so many people just in that little place in Fatima, in the town that was right there, which I've visited many times, and the energy there is incredible. So now that I've said all of this, why don't we get to basics? Tell us about the prophecy of belibaste
Well, if you
and
don't
how it's
mind,
and how, yeah, no,
so
no, please, of course.
I'd like to just add something to that,
Yeah.
because I believe that the white lady that I have seen that manifested in Orcival and that also manifests in Montségur, and I know this is a terribly heretical thing to say, so I apologize to any Catholics listening, but I believe that she is the same being, and it's an iteration of the same energy stream or the same being, as the lady who was seen in Fatima as the lady who Vance has had contact with. Sorry, Vance, for revealing that. As the lady, you know,
I know,
that
it's okay.
as the lady who was seen in Lord.
Mhm.
And this is a bit of an aside, but the CIA psychic Ingo Swann, who was
Mhm.
part of the Men Who Stare at Goats program, has written a book about the apparitions of Mary. And I really like this book because it links together the different apparitions and shows just how huge they were. Like you said, Miguel, you know, so many people have seen so many of these apparitions all over the world, and there are many that we don't even hear about because the Catholic Church never verifies them. So
Yeah,
there
but
are
when you
little,
talk to them, like in Fatima, Guadalupe, they never say the Virgin Mary. They describe as a light or a female, a lady. That's it.
the lady, that's
Yeah.
what we all call her, the lady.
Mhm.
That's right. And I have to say that when I had that, I will get back to what you said, but just to say that when I had that experience in Orsaval, and then I met the man who had the same experience, but 1 year previously in the same place, he thought he'd seen the Virgin Mary because he
Mhm.
was raised Catholic and it happened opposite the church. I didn't think I'd seen the Virgin Mary, but I had no idea what I had seen. And it made me feel very uncomfortable for a long time because I just didn't know why I'd met this being, you know.
Mhm.
And her interest in something very banal like my love life, and you know, I can understand like why she would help this man like not kill himself, but you know, why give me that information? It was just surreal. And it was only when I met Richard Stanley. Again, this is how Richard Stanley and I connected because I was working for an esoteric web TV channel in Paris, and part of
Mm.
my job was to find subjects for us to interview. And so Richard was on the list, and okay, he knows about cathars. All right, I'll get in contact with him. But then as soon as I found out more about him and I found out he'd made a film about meeting the lady, then I was like, okay, there's something happening here. And the first conversation we had was not about the cathars, it was about the White Lady. And he helped me to understand that I was not alone, that there were many, many, many people who'd had this experience all over the world, and that there was a large, strong tradition of apparitions. But I call them visitations because they're
Mm.
visitations, they're not an apparition,
Right.
of the White Lady all throughout the Pyrenees, going back to Neolithic times and, you know, prehistory. The most ancient um, sculpture of a woman, of a goddess, is found in the Pyrenees. And she is made out of, I think, a tusk of some kind. And so Richard believes that she is one of the original representations of this particular being, of the White Lady. So I just wanted to add that in there because for me, your story about Fatima, you know, it connects in. And what you say about the psychic women that you're meeting who keep saying, you know, she's coming back, she's coming back. Well, she
Mhm.
is coming back and she's here.
Mhm. Yeah, she is here already. It's just the manifestation's gonna take
Yeah.
a little bit long. Yeah, incredible times, and again, this place, the Iberian Peninsula is just full of energies, portals, and great place to be, and a great place to find yourself or lose your past self. One of the two is a great adventure. So, tell us about the prophecy that I was talking, belibaste, and
Yeah. So
let's
the
break that down.
prophecy, yeah, the prophecy, well, what's interesting, I think, about the prophecy is we can see it's happening all around us. And Balibaste is a very kind of paradoxical character. He's a trickster. You speak about trickster deities, and he's a trickster. You know, Balibaste murdered someone. So all these kind of
Right.
people who don't really know about the cathars, I'm going to be a bit mean and say New Agers that don't really know about cathars. Sorry, New Agers, but you know, do your research, please.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they kind of hold up Balibaste as some kind of iconic guru figure. some kind of Christic type character, but he was a very paradoxical man, and I like him for that reason, because he's not whiter than white. He's not purer than pure. He murdered someone when he was a young guy, and then he got involved in like a very weird threesome type relationship, where he convinced his best friend to marry the young woman that he was having an affair with because she was pregnant, and then tried to blame the pregnancy on him. So he was a mixed bag, and yet this is what's great about the Cathars, because whatever you did before, if you really chose the path and you chose it completely, the absolution that you got wasn't just because you could buy it, like in the Catholic Church. The absolution that people had was genuine, it was real, and belibaste, unfortunately, was very flawed, and that's what led to his demise, because he had the chance to escape many, many, many times, and unfortunately, he was tricked, and he was trapped by someone he considered to be a friend. And this is the sad history of the Cathars that those of us who remember do remember, and that is the betrayal of one by the other. People often had a bounty on their heads because they were considered to be such dangerous heretics, and Montserrat itself only fell because it was betrayed from the inside. So I just want to get that out of the way, because belibaste was not this kind of wonderful pure character. However, he was a Cathar, and he did pass through the initiations, and he did change his life. And that's what's wonderful about him, that he changed his life. He changed his ways. And what's really sad is that he was then caught out by someone that he really trusted. And when he was burned, now we're not quite sure about the dates. It's either August the 21st or August the 24th, but it's in that period. It said that he uttered before he was burned, that after 700 years, the laurel will turn green again. Good men and women shall return. So the Cathars believed in reincarnation. That was part of their doctrine, and that's another reason they were hated. And so for 700 years, those who've kept these traditions alive have been waiting for this day. And these traditions have been kept alive by not only the people from history or the people today. It's kind of a story which lives through us and beyond us and keeps reigniting. It's like the flame reignites in different people throughout time. And so it was passed down to me because of my involvement in the French Gnostic Church, because not Deodat Rocher, but Jules Doinel, who created part of my branch of the Gnostic Church, was deeply involved in these mysteries. But it was then passed on to me through my association with Richard as well, and through being in Montserrat and meeting people who had memories.
And and again, it's 700 years this August 21st, 2021. And how are you preparing for it? Are you having a ritual, or how are you doing? What's your church doing?
Private. We're keeping it private now. Yeah. The main issue, of course, is COVID. And we all had the idea that this March 16th, which is the 777th anniversary of the fall of Montserrat itself, bearing in mind that happened a long time before belibaste died, it was the 777th anniversary of the fall of Montserrat and the 700th anniversary of the prophecy. And so we all had this idea that we'd be up the mountain and there'd be a big, ritual, and there'd be chalices and swords, and we were going to do all this stuff. And then COVID said, no, you're not. And I think I said to you privately, Miguel, that what I have realized, and I think this is important, I think what's about to happen in the coming days is we will see a shift. I do believe we will see a shift, but for me, the real prophecy doesn't begin until after the 21st. it doesn't begin until, I would say, next year, really. It's only going to be next year when it starts to be fulfilled, I believe. But I do believe we will see a tidal change beginning after this period. My preparation is to make sure that nothing happens to any of us between now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we know that there are counter forces.
Oh yeah. They are making their moves, and so a lot of it is, for example, you ended up in southern France, Montserrat, that area, because you had visions or awakening of your past life there. And so a lot of individuals who are appearing in southern France, they're waking up to their past life as cathars and other heretics. And
Yeah.
they are part of this, I want to call it restoration or new age of Sophia when she returns, whoever she is.
Yeah. And that's an interesting and perfect word that you use, because Jules Donnell, when he received his own prophecy, Jules Donnell was a medium as well as being a high-level Martinist and Freemason, involved in a spiritualist group in Paris with Lady Caithness, who was a prominent esotericist. And Jules Donnell received the information in a seance that this is the era of Gnosis restored. And he was told in the seance, recreate the Cathar Gnostic Church. And if I remember, that was in around 1876, maybe 1880. And sure enough, that is what he did with Lady Caithness and with other people. And he was the first man to pass on traditional Syriac Orthodox lineages to women, but with his own spiritual lineage, which he believed he was given by the Aeon Christ, as he called it. And I think I may have said to you about him that he had 13 cathars arrive in the seance and give their names. And because he worked as an archivist in a library in Orleans, he was actually able to check those names by the records in the archives, and they all checked out as real.
He did, yeah, he nailed them, as they
Yeah.
say here. So verify. I guess he didn't have a phone where he could have found his girlfriend's phone at the time, so the
No.
spirits had to do something more of that time.
The reason I
And
mentioned that, Miguel, is because when you asked me about the prophecy, to me they're all interlinked. What Jules Donnell was receiving, the apparitions at Fatima, Lord, everything started around 1875, I think. Around 1870, 1875, we had a swathe of apparitions of the White Lady throughout France. We had these pockets of mystics, of esotericists, of clairvoyants and spiritualists popping up everywhere, and people starting to have memories, and then people challenges to recreate the Gnostic Church, to learn about the cathars, and so many of us we're just pieces of this puzzle. We're being brought in to manifest the same prophecy, so we're all part of the same stream, and it's drawing us all together and bringing us to where we need to be and connecting us to those that we need to meet, I feel. As for why, this is the mystery. And I don't think I'm going to really fully know why until next year when I'm up that mountain and, I have the people with me who are supposed to be there. And I think then we'll find out why.
and that's so next March, that's the 777 year since the fall of Montserrat, or was it this last March? And
It was this last March, yeah.
and then
It's
because
this one just
nobody could,
gone.
and you couldn't, nobody could congregate.
No, but the way I see it is that was the year we all died. So, it's the 777th anniversary of the massacre. And it's the 700th anniversary of Belibaste's murder. And so really the time to begin the new world is next year. It's, the deaths are happening at this time in a way. This is the year of death. This is the year of it all ending. So next year will be the year of it rebirthing again of the greening of the bough, I think.
Oh yeah, I think something great is on the way. Yeah, and I'm not trying to make light about the phone, but it kind of ties in with Danielle. You should always be skeptical and try to verify, because as we're talking, there are counterfeit spirits. There are spirits sometimes that just want to screw with your head. I've been thinking a lot lately of John Keel, who wrote the Mothman Prophecy, and how he claims these beings are just they're just cosmic shit posters and jokers. Yeah, they help humanity, but ultimately they're just playing a joke on us, because like a string and a cat. That's what they're
Yeah.
doing. So you have to be careful with these archons. So
Speaking of possible hoaxes or not, Medjugorje. Do you know about that? The one in Croatia. Interesting. Yeah, it's another white lady manifestation, according to some people, and according to other people, it's not real. And I don't think the Catholic Church has sanctioned it the way they did with Fatima and Lourdes, but that doesn't make any difference.
Oh, interesting. No, when was it from, Vance? Which
uh,
era?
I think it was in the 20th century, either 19th or 20th century. It's pretty sure it was the 20th century. You've
Oh
never
no,
heard of this Medjugorje in Croatia, Miguel?
no.
Huh, that's funny. I was in a store one time, and this gal I got to talking to all of a sudden gave me this little medal which came from there. And it was another, they call it the Virgin Mary sighting. You know how they call these things Virgin Mary sightings. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a question from one of our viewers here.
I'm pretty convinced that most of these sightings are real and valid. There are too many of them that happen in too
there's a
many
lot of them.
places. And what I've seen myself, I just can't believe that people would make this up, because we've got nothing to gain by making this up. It's actually
Yeah.
very humbling to have this kind of experience, and worrying, like you say, Miguel, because you don't quite know, well, what is this all about?
No, we don't know. Again, that's where a
Mm.
little bit of faith and trust comes into the picture. And at the end, it's
Mhm.
a journey of self-knowledge. If anything, you learn about who you are and what your strengths are and your talents and capabilities, and you bring a little bit more light into the world. That's a good thing. You don't need a Hollywood ending.
True.
And the also interesting about belibaste is that he was executed by the Inquisition of Pamiers, and the lead was Jacques Fournier, and he would
Hmm.
later become Pope Benedict VIII. A fitting word, crown for killing heretics. So I think that's what's interesting too. Obviously, there must be a lot of synchronicities that you're discovering as you go down this path.
Yeah, of course. And one of the issues with this whole story, as you know, as I've said before, is the Cathars were against the wealth of the Catholic Church and the corruption of the bishops. And they didn't believe that that was what Christ wanted. Christ himself did not go and become rich and have big, ostentatious buildings and so on, full of gold. That only happened when the Romans got involved. Um, and so they believed that what the bishops were doing was very heretical in itself. And they preached a much more simplistic way of life. And it's no good to just pay for absolution. And one of the horrific things about the Albigensian Crusade is that the soldiers and knights who were recruited were told, well, you'll get forgiven for what you're about to do. And so they could act with impunity, and they did, with extreme brutality. And as I've said before, this is where the Inquisition began. The Inquisition was created for the destruction of the Cathars. And so when we think about this third age, getting back to the prophecy, we have the other prophecy, which goes back even further, which was that there will be a third age of Christianity. The first age is the Father, which
Mhm.
is symbolized by Jehovah, as the Gnostics would say, the demiurge. And the Old Testament, the smiting demonic God that wants to kill everyone who disagrees. And then, they believed there was a second era of Christianity, which was represented by the Son and represented by Jesus and the New Testament. And then the prophecy says there will be and is now a third age of Christianity, which is represented by the Holy Spirit, which is represented by Mary, and the Holy Book has not been written yet. Or if it has, it's been lost. And it was said that the Cathars had a holy book that was known as the Book of Love. However, nobody knows where it is. There is a story that it's somewhere inside the mountain of Montserrat. And that's certainly something that Otto Rahn and other people who came to Montserrat looking for various treasures were searching for. So the idea of this third age, has been a prophecy for a very, very long time. And like I say, we are mere threads in the chain and bringing this into fruition now, because now is the time.
Indeed. Now it's a good time to wake up. I mean, doesn't take much of a genius to see how these are very transitory times, stressful times. The collective consciousness of humanity is fragmenting. It's weak. People don't know what they're doing. They want to go back to some old normal, but that will never happen. And and there's a lot of apocalypses. I mean, veils are being torn down and worlds are ending, civilizations are crumbling slowly, but it's happening. So it's this is the time, as I always say on the show, this may not be the best time to be alive, but it's the best time to be awake, because if you open your channels, you're going to catch some surf, some waves of gnosis and enlightenment, and that's what matters. That's how we ultimately get out of this prison planet, as I call it sometimes. This matrix.
Yeah.
So that's
And
my little rant. Please go ahead.
Well, one of the great things about being alive at this very, very difficult time is the fact that we can find each other so much more easily now, thanks to the technology that we have.
Good point. Yeah, that's what it's here for. We can connect across the world and share ideas and all that. So, yeah, thank God for that. I appreciate that, Mark Zuckerberg and the rest of you right now for this brief moment. I will appreciate it and give it to you. That I'll give it to you. But for the most part, you're just archons. Vance, does anybody have a question? Do you have a question? I need to let
I've
the
got
cat out real quick, so I'll let
yeah.
you take over.
Okay, yeah, we got quite a bit of them. Where do I start? This should be a fast one, so I'll start with that. Does the White Lady have any relation to the Robert Graves's The White Goddess?
Yes.
Okay. It looks like the archons are after my network here because you froze a second. Okay, good. Here's a question I have. This wasn't a question, but the fleur de lis. Someone mentioned that it was related to the Priory of Zion, four in the Godhead, the Holy Ghost, feminine mother, and firstborn twins, Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. What do you know about the fleur de lis?
That is a show in itself.
So there is something to it.
Yes. Yeah. How much time do we have? That is a very deep topic, and yes, it is related to the Priory of Zion, and that's all I'm going to say about it right now.
Okay.
Do more research. Whoever made that question, you're on the right track. Continue, do more research.
Yeah. It was Mai Martine. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but that's the person who asked the question. There's something about a talc mine being pushed on Montserrat, and how does it relate to the prophecy? Is that do you know about the talc mine?
Yes, I do. The Imris group. Yeah. Richard has been involved in trying to get this closed down, and there has been a lot of activism about it over the last few years. The Imris group, They are mining for talc, but it's not on Montserrat. It's on a different mountain.
Oh, okay.
St. Bartholomew. But it's still a terrible thing what they're doing, and it still needs to be stopped. However, at the moment, I think thanks to COVID, it has actually stopped. So we'll see if it continues. But yeah, it's not.
The dark cloud having a silver lining. Okay. I got another question here. I've got a little network hiccup here, so I hope you can still hear this. Are you familiar with Corey Cosmo? We may have. Hi, Miguel. I see you. Amanda has frozen here for a second. Can you hear us, Amanda?
Hopefully she'll come back on.
Yeah, she did. She did before.
Corey Cosmo, isn't that's that Hermetic text where Isis teaches her son Horus about the secrets of the cosmos? I believe that's what they're talking about. Yeah, and I know in late antiquity, Plutarch, who was a Middle Platonist, he always said that Isis was the daughter of Hermes. So I know I'm putting in that Hermes connection. So because I gotta do. Well, we lost Amanda. Let's see if she's on. Let me see if she calls on Facebook to join back on, or is she out for the night? Well, at least we got an hour out of here. I guess while Amanda is trying to get on, I'm going to do a little share screen and do some of the visuals. Oh, there she's coming back on.
Okay, good.
Did they get us? I think they did.
The Archons,
There you are.
we were just talking about that. The Archons made their move. There you go. But you came back.
I had a couple more questions. Yeah. Okay. Is that okay, Miguel? Asterox Foundation. A couple of questions. Okay. Are those who are waking up? Are those waking up who feel they are former cathars situated all over the planet and from multiple cultures, or is it unique to particular regions and ethnicities?
All over.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does the white lady always appear specifically feminine, or can the appearances be more androgynous in form?
Well, what I saw the first time was definitely androgynous. I mean, it was a being of light, but I didn't know it was a woman, but it just took the shape of a woman. She didn't have a face, but she looked like she was wearing a kind of cloak coming down here. And but she was about 8 foot tall, and had a feminine shape. And she spoke with a woman's voice, a very high, crystalline, alien-like woman's voice. I can say alien-like because it's a sound I've never heard in this world. And every time I've had contact with her, she's had the same kind of voice. So there is an androgynous nature to her, but her essence is feminine, I would say.
Yeah, in my case, I didn't have any visual stimuli, but the overwhelming feeling was feminine. And I know what feminine feels like to me. So, but the information that I got somehow was that it was like the aeons, the syzygies. Yeah. There are two sides of it, and you're seeing the one side. That was my experience.
What's interesting, if I can just add to that, is that the Black Goddess and the White Lady, I believe, are those two sides.
The darkness and the light unified.
Yeah. I think from now on she needs to appear as Nicolas Cage to people. I think that will change the universe.
How do you know she doesn't already, Miguel?
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Have you
I know there's
seen
a
our
new movie. Yeah, and we talked about Mandy, and he's got a movie out where it's like a John Wick movie, except he doesn't lose his dog. Somebody steals his pet pig. So he's running around the city looking for his pet pig. So only Nicolas Cage, my God. So I think, that should be the next apparition. I want to get to some of the visuals too that you shared, but I should do some house cleaning. It's such a fascinating conversation. There's some, as they say, highly things to address. I know we talked about it last time, audience, but we are changing the password to the private RSS feed. So we will change it next week. So if you get disconnected, it's go to the website and find that password. Again, I should mention that I am now fully working for Aeon Byte and myself. So if you need in one of my features, if you would, is voiceover. So if you need any voiceover work, audiobook, movies, documentaries, commercials, let me know. I'm working on several projects. I have worked on several projects, and I can give you that stellar gnosis kind of work. Other than that, the usual stuff, it will be out in audio soon. We got some great shows coming, and next week we will have Robert Price and the origins of Gnosticism. Well, he'll give us a great conversation on how Gnosticism started, and he makes a very good case, very sound case that it started before Christian times. So I think that's my quick house cleaning. I got notes all over the place. But if you don't mind, Amanda, can we show you some of the visuals you sent me?
Of course.
Look, awesome. Let's see if I can get this working. No. Let's see. Share screen. Oh, my God. Let's see the hoops I have to jump through. All right. Do you see it? Does everybody see this?
Yep, I
Awesome.
see it.
All right. Well, why don't we start with the first one? What is this?
So this is from the place where belibaste was executed, Ville Rouge Terminus, and it's the memorial that had been created, and so they've made a little road going through the village, which they have named the Passage of the Cathar Belibaste. And the cross is what they call the cross of Occitania, which is also being used to represent the cathars. So, and the date is 1321, which is when he died. So.
Yeah, here we go. It's coming in about 8 days. Very excited. And I have a question for this. I've had friends who have visited southern France, and even my friend Andrew Philip Smith, who wrote a book, an excellent book about the cathars. And they say that you have to be careful because there are touristy gifts and symbols that have nothing to do with the medieval times. It's just money makers for the people there.
Yeah, this is true.
What are some of the things you shouldn't buy? I mean, what are some of the symbols you're like, this is not authentic, people?
Personally, I don't mind, because the Cathars never worshipped the cross at all, because they said, why would we worship the image upon which our father died? So for me, this Cathar cross, people say that that's not really genuinely medieval, but I like it because it's come to represent Occitania. And you will find it on all of the merchandise. But for me, it's still an equal armed cross, which was the symbol that the Cathars used, an equal armed cross within a circle. But it's quite pretty. But it wouldn't have been genuinely used by the Cathars, this cross. No, that's true. It depends. For me personally, I don't think there's going to be any kind of negative response if you buy or wear this Cathar cross. I know people who've had it tattooed on them, so they're all okay.
And the dove for sure was a Cathar symbol?
Yeah, I believe so. The dove, of course, it has a lot related to the dove. Obviously, there is the idea of the dove as the Holy Spirit, but in the legend of what happened to Esclamande de Foix, the high priestess of the Cathars, she is said to have turned into a dove when she died. It's said that she never was murdered in the Crusades, but that she turned into a dove and flew away. And she flew away to the mountain, which is currently being destroyed by the talc mine. So, yeah, the Pic de Saint Barthélemy is directly opposite Montségur. So it's said that she flew from Montségur to the Pic de Saint Barthélemy, where she lives on eternally and comes out every now and then and manifests as a woman. The Pic de Saint Barthélemy is a very, very high mountain with an ancient druidic lake at the top called the Lake of the Devil. And it's said that if people climb that mountain and throw a rock into the lake, the devil will come and get them. So it's not advised. But it's another place of legend with a lot of history and power associated with it. But the Cathar dove, I think, is, again, I don't personally use that symbol myself on anything that I wear, but I have seen people who are very interested in the cathars who live in Occitania who do wear it. So I'd say it's personal choice. But your historian friend is correct. You know, a lot of these symbols were not actually used at that time.
Right. Awesome. Let's see. Let me move some stuff out. And speaking of belibaste, this is another one you shared with me. What is this?
This is the place where he was kept prisoner and then burned in the square in 1321 with his friend who betrayed him. So this is Real Rue Terminez. And this is the ancient castle. You can still see part of the keep on the left. And that's where he was held when he was tricked to going back to Occitania, because he escaped to Spain and he was living quite freely in Spain and teaching in Spain as a cathar in northern Spain. And so it's very unfortunate that one of his own friends betrayed him and took him back to Occitania, where he was tried for heresy and burned on this day.
So they just weren't going to let him go. Just say he's out of the country, he's out of sight, out of mind. It's like they had to be mafioso about it and eliminate him.
They did, which I think shows the fear, the level of fear that they had about the power of the cathars. The power of the cathars spiritually, but also socially. If they had to go to such, an extent for how many years, to kill so many millions of people, they had a lot of fear.
Yeah. This is something that had to be wiped out. Too much gnosis for the times. Too much gnosis for any time. What am I saying? All right. What other pictures do I have? And this one.
This is the Cathar dove, and this is being used as a memorial stone. So it's being carved into a stone in the city of Minerve, which is a place where there was a huge Cathar population who were all massacred, unfortunately, during the Albigensian Crusade, so long before Belibaste's time. Now, what's interesting also is that Belibaste, they call him the last Cathar, but he wasn't. The Cathars did continue underground in different streams in different countries, like the Templars. Some of them escaped. They definitely went into northern Spain and maybe even further south than that. And I've heard from people whose families were involved in this that some of them went as far away as Denmark. So.
Really?
Yeah, and others say that they lived on as the Huguenots in France, the kind of neo-Protestants, proto-Protestants, and so they call him the last Cathar, but I don't believe he really was. The stream continued, but it was never able to reach the level of power and influence that it had when he was still alive, because of the level of the persecutions. And I think his murder was such so symbolic. The thing that they did in the Crusade, which was really powerful, is they used fear tactics. And in one case, they blinded an entire city and left one man with eyes to see, to guide the others, left him with one eye to guide the others. So these poor wandering cathars, wandered from place to place, blinded and terrified. So they did was really wicked. And I think that Belibaste, when they realized they got to him as well, and I think the power to fight, they just lost the power to continue to fight anymore and will to continue to fight. So they went underground. Yeah. And I think
the world of the Cosmocrator
to us now.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah. the world of the Cosmocrator, the king of the world.
Yeah.
He was calling the shots back then, so.
Still is. He still tries.
Yeah, he still is. Yes, yes. He's still very much in control, as should be obvious by what's out there. All right.
Mhm.
How about we move on to this?
Yeah, this is Montserrat. This is the path up to the Pog. And as you can see there, this is when the trees were decimated. Can you see how brown they all are?
Yeah.
No leaves.
Wow. And how long does it take you to get all the way up there?
It takes about 45 minutes.
Wow. It's quite a trek. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
What
exercise.
month was this? Was this recently?
This was about a year ago, I think. So it's a lot greener now, thankfully.
Wonderful. And let's see what's the other. What's the other one we got? This one stayed with me because we've had so many storms. Tell us this backstory on this. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, this is a picture taken by Richard, and we had extraordinary storms up on the Pog, and we've all seen lightning emit from the mountain.
From the mountain, wow.
Yeah, and it draws lightning to it. As you can see in that image, it draws the lightning, and that's in the movie. I don't know if you remember, there's a line in the movie where the lightning is being drawn into the meteorite before it disappears.
Yeah.
And the vineyard's outside, and they're watching it and saying it's drawing the lightning in. Well, this was inspired by this moment about how Montserrat draws the lightning to it. But it doesn't only draw the lightning to it, it emits blanket lightning, and we've seen it.
Incredible.
And I've also seen it emit a kind of neon red, like a lightning as well, which has been seen by other people too. It's a very powerful and strange place.
To say the least.
Miguel, did I tell you that the Catholic Church actually anathematized Montserrat every single year after the fall of Montserrat up until about 1950?
Really? No. My God. I know they recently very quietly apologized for it. The church did. But very quietly, no press. They kind of went there and said, "We're sorry." It's like, oh, come on.
There was a ceremony up in Montserrat at the church where they came and did an official pardon, but I wasn't there at the time, unfortunately. So they did do it there. It's a little too little, a lot too late, though.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. And then we have you. And what are you doing here, Amanda?
Yeah, this was in Sintra.
Oh, yeah, in Sintra? Wow.
In Sintra. Yep. And this was on the set of the movie, actually. And the lady in the picture is one of Lord Byron's descendants, Katie Byron, who worked with us on the movie. And
yeah, Byron lived there in Sintra. I've walked by his house, his former house, sorry.
He did. Yeah. And so because of my Gnostic church, I was just passing on a blessing to Katie in this picture, because we decided to do some work together. She was very interested in what I was doing and wanted to become part of it. So this is just before I was going to ordain her. So she became fully ordained in Sintra. And it just so happened that where we made the film, the house had this chapel, this beautiful chapel attached. So the pink house that you see in the movie had this pink chapel right next to it. So I consecrated the chapel and we used it. And that's when this picture was taken.
Love it. What an incredible ceremony. Wonderful. I think we've hit all the visuals. I hope that's been helpful for the audience. We definitely need to check out Amanda's previous interview, because obviously in this interview, we're not going to go by the blow-by-blow of Cathar rituals and all that. We already discussed that. I've definitely done many shows on the Cathars and the Bogomils and all those wonderful heretics who got stamped out across Europe in the Middle Ages and before. And what would you say if people are interested in more, not just not learning about the cathars, Amanda, but experiencing them, or they want to be part of this new age or the church, or what do you recommend they do, again, to experience what you're experiencing?
It's a very good question. In the work that I do with the visuals, the art that I make, part of my inspiration is to be able to transmit some of this experience to those who can't be there physically in these places. But I would say, as much as possible, try to go. You know, it's in the land. It's in the land there. I'd read about the cathars a little tiny bit, but it never really made an impact upon me until I went to Montserrat for the first time, and then it just hit me that I was at home. As I said to you, that the place I'd been looking for all of my life was there, and it was real, and I'd found where I belonged. And so I feel that those who really want to experience this need to meditate about Montserrat, ask, pray, ask. Yes, you can read and you can do the research, which is all there. You know, there are many people, like you say, who are talking about cathars, but to really experience it, I think go there. And if you can't physically go, look at pictures and go in your mind and see what you are given, because it still exists in another dimension of time and space. That world still exists and it's there. So that's what I would recommend. And physically go and, you know, reach out to someone like me or other people who are in the area to take you and show you these places, and immerse yourself in the energy of them, and allow what arises to arise, because the practices are deeply embedded in the land. Cathars did a lot in caves, you know, a lot underground, and high mountains and deep caves and lakes and springs. It's all there in the land. You know, Miguel. We talked about this, haven't we? About the necessity to go there. Yeah, and I know right now it's very hard, but we can go in our minds, in our hearts. We can still be there.
Indeed, and not just there, but again, as we talked, Girona, René-le-Château, all those areas have, again, Sintra, Portugal, Lisbon, all those areas have energy. So if you're sensitive, good time to go there or explore and do whatever ritual meditation you can grab onto and open up. When you went down there, when you had your past life visions, was that when you went down to southern France, or did you have those before?
I always knew there was something, but it was only when I went to Montserrat for the first time that it really hit me. I saw that mountain and I just knew. And then meeting Richard, you know, I knew that I knew him from that time. And so other characters that I met all played their part in that story. And Richard has always been interested in the 1244 story. And I kept saying, no, it started earlier. It started in 1209. And I didn't know how I knew that. And only then, when I actually went fully into the memories with some help of a friend of mine, it was not regression. It was more just opening the space to see what might be remembered. Did every detail come? 1209 August. My least favorite month, as you know, Miguel. August 1209 is when Carcassonne was taken, and that's what I remember. I remember Carcassonne being taken and what followed. And so I always knew, and for a long time I couldn't climb to the top of the mountain. There's a place halfway up that I can never get past without becoming hysterical and crying, because I don't know what happened there, but there, and it's a place many people can't get past when they try to go up. Sensitive people, psychic people. You know, Richard kind of relates it to being like an initiatory gate that you have to pass through, the terror and the fear and the grief in order to go up to the top. but it can be very overwhelming, especially if you try to go at night.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, yes, being there physically definitely brought those memories to the surface and gave me a context as well, because if I'd never been there, these memories would be floating around and they wouldn't have had a context. And the context for me is the absolute love and passion that I have for this place, which I would never have known if I hadn't been there. And that makes facing the pain of the memories of what happened possible, I think. Because I also remember what it was like before. And lots of people who can't remember what it was like before remember that feeling of this kind of golden age, this spiritual renaissance, like you said.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. As we talked in our last interview, it was a time when all these wonderful cultures and spiritualities, from the cathars to the troubadours, who some say actually were the cathars, they sort of morphed. And then Sufism, Islam, a place where women had much more elevated status. Alchemists were there. It was just an incredible stew of pure enlightenment in those days. And that got, as we talked, the king of the world, the cosmocrator, Satan, who, as the cathars referred to him, had to wipe it out. So now we, as you said, now that we can't just be in one place, we're spread out on the internet, so it's a lot harder for the demiurge to get us, and we can move a lot faster.
He just tries to mess up our technology.
Kick you off feeds and all that.
Yeah.
Well, keep trying, Satan, because we're almost at the end, and we've won on this Friday the 13th. I better watch out.
Don't speak too soon, Val.
Yeah, there's a banana peel outside my door probably right now. He put it there. After the show, I'll be like in the hospital. Yeah, and trust me, on August 21st, I might be messaging you in the morning where I am. Like, okay, do you feel something? Do you feel something? So, and the same for you, audience out there. Let's keep a link. Let's create a cool egregore on August the 21st. Let's change the age. At the end of the day, as I say, we have the power. We outnumber them. We outnumber the elite, and what we have inside is far more powerful than anything the demiurge and his archons have. They fooled us into believing otherwise. That's the trick they played on us. So let's do it. And as we get to the end, Vance, do you have any last question from the audience?
Well, let's see. Occult fan had a question I promised that I'd deliver, which is, what does the consolamentum look like with regard to this Covis BS? That's his exact question.
Gee, I wonder where he stands in the issue. What does the consolamentum look like today?
In relation to what BS?
The COVID BS.
But remember, man, you can't say that word, or else I'll be back in jail.
Oh no, I didn't say it. I didn't say it.
Consolamentum. The consolamentum was the death rite of the cathars, and it was the laying on of hands. But it wasn't only a death rite; it was also when you died to your current life and were reborn. So when a person became a parfait or a perfected one, they were given the consolamentum before they became a parfait. So it's as if to say, okay, that person that you were now is dead. And, the person you are now is free from the material realm, but living on, kind of like a bodhisattva in the Buddhist tradition. So people continue to live on as a parfait, but they were not restricted in the same way by the king of the world. That was the idea. And the consolamentum was so powerful that 5 days before the end of the siege in Montserrat, a number of soldiers converted, even though they knew they were going to die for doing so. They could have escaped, but they chose not to, and they chose to burn with the rest of them. And so it's a laying on of hands and a transmission of a charge. is the way I would describe it. You know, the Christic ministry has always been through the laying on of hands and through using water. And the consolamentum is similar to the Gnostic fire baptism ritual. Do you know this one, Miguel? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it's like conferring on a sense of immortality.
Maybe he's wondering physically if it's been affected by, you know, people not wanting to get close to each other or contact each other because of
That's
COVID.
a good question. Given that it's given by the laying on of hands, then yes, you know, it could be. However, yeah.
I've had healers, like my uncle's a healer. He just needs like 4 inches. He doesn't have to touch
right.
you, and you can feel it going through your body. So
Yeah.
and maybe
I
that's how
mean,
you get
distance
around it.
healing works.
Yeah, it does
Distance
work.
healing works.
Mm-hmm.
And so distance consolamentum probably would also work. But the consolamentum is not something that's just given out here and there willy-nilly. It's a very serious operation. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me three.
Is the Cathar cross related to the Templar cross? Someone asked that.
Good question, because they are a similar shape if you look at them carefully.
Right.
And some people do connect the Templar cross to the fleur-de-lis with the way that it splits at the end. You know, you can look at that as a lily, the petals of a lily opening. Some people relate the Templar cross to representing Mary Magdalene, and representing that the fleur-de-lis represents the generative functions of Mary Magdalene as the mother of the Desposny lineage, the Christ lineage. So the Cathar cross and the Templar cross, I have no proof of this, but I would say instinctively that they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Finally, Polaire Brotherhood. Astrox want to know if you have any comments on the Polaire Brotherhood.
Yes, I do. Polaires were very important in this story, and Grace Cook and Theodore Rocher was also a member of the Polaires, who was one of the main people who, as I said, restarted this Cathar Gnostic movement after Jules Doinel. The Polaires went to Montségur and they chose it as their holy mountain. And Theodore Rocher was involved in another order whose name is the Order of the Golden. I can't remember the Golden. No, sorry, it's gone. So Theodore Rocher was also involved in the Polaires too. And I know that Richard Stanley has written a lot about the Polaires. So if anyone watching wants to have a look, I think his book about Otto Rahn is available on Amazon, I think, just as a Kindle. And so the Polaires, yeah, I know about them. And they definitely went to Montségur, and they believe they found a special book in Montségur. However, some people say that they planted it there themselves, so we don't know at this point. But they were very interested in the stellar system and in the polar star, hence the name.
Ah, very good.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, we probably should wrap it up. This has been an incredible conversation, an important one. And again, please check out Amanda's last interview and then listen to this. This will be out in audio. It will be out in YouTube in a few minutes after we shut down the live feed. And definitely delve into the stuff. It's important. I think we are at the change of the age. And I think, yes, I think Amanda and I agree Sophia is already here. So what are you going to do about it? Because she's going to do something about us. But Amanda, as always, thank you very much for coming on. And people are already asking for a future show. So hopefully the Archons get out of the way and we can have our next discussion in the future. And very excited about everything you're doing, everything you're remembering, and all the light you're bringing into the world. Appreciate it and thank you.
Thank you so much, Miguel, and you, Vance, too. It's been lovely to reconnect with you.
And always,
Absolutely.
yes,
Same
yes,
here.
yes. Thank you, Vance, for keeping us coming. And Amanda, people probably are wondering if I want to get a hold of Amanda, what do I do? Where do they find you?
Well, I have a website, which is my name, which is written at the bottom. Well, the middle name is missing. So it's www.amandamariamneradcliffe.com. And if you just type my name in, you'll find it. Or on Facebook with the same name.
Awesome, awesome. And yeah, you're gonna be talking. Aren't you going to talk to Anthony Peake soon? I can't wait for that one. You guys will just have a blast. Anthony's great. So
6th
I
of
look forward to
September, I
that.
think. Yeah.
Huh? September?
6th
All right,
of
all right.
September. Yeah.
I'll be on the chat asking questions.
How will I know it's you?
I don't know. It won't make any sense, probably. It'll be nonsensical. But yeah, this has been great for you audience that have been out there in the chat. Great questions, great comments. We appreciate you coming here to the Virtual Alexandria, as I call it. And we will be having more. Again, I will be, with this new age, I am increasing the content, the variety, and I am do whatever I can to bring you that gnosis, because the greatest thing you'll do is wake up in this world. You came here not to be good, but to be yourselves, to find your destiny, and all of us have an important destiny for the restoration of the universe. So thanks. I'm not getting emotional. That really is a frog in my throat. But thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself, your true self, here in the desert of the real, as I say. And we will all talk soon. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.